Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome back to Turn Down for What. Another day,
Another episode.
another episode. Let's go. Let's go.
Let's get it done.
Yes. So today we are kind of following up on, we're piggybacking, if you will, on a Bow family EV recent topic, and thought it was a interesting conversation for our listeners, and so wanted to see if we can discuss the recent drama that is within Bow family EV's channel.
Yeah, just been doing so the last month when I went out to to Norway and to the Netherlands, I needed some content so that when I was traveling for a couple weeks, I wouldn't have a dead channel. And so a bunch of I've had a bunch of NACS to CCS Tesla adapter folks reaching out and saying, hey, try out our adapter. So I was like, hey, I'll do a bunch of videos, send them to me and I'll get them done. And so I've tested 4 different adapters. I've always been a fan of the A to Z, and it's worked great for me. But even that one, I've learned things along the way. We met Mariano from Amphenol, and that was way back in April that we did an episode with them. And then we saw them at ACT Expo in May, learned a lot about their adapter, which is still the only one to be UL certified under 2252. I've learned a bunch about that. Electron sort of gets creative with their marketing language and says that they are UL approved under 2252, and that's a little bit tricky because they have not been UL certified. They have a third party. I can't remember the name. I want to say SGS or something. It's a reputable third party. They do UL testing, right? And they use all the same criteria. But it's not UL listed. It's just using the same criteria with this third party. So the newest Electron, and Electron's got 2 of them out there. There's like $10 or $20 difference between them. The Typhoon, I think it is, and the Typhoon Pro, or am I confusing the A to Z one now? They got all these names.
Was A to Z, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I can't remember what the heck they call the Electron one, but there's basically it started with the Ford adapter where Electron basically makes the Ford adapter.
Vortex plug.
Is that what it's called?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's the Vortex plug.
Vortex, and so I think it's the Vortex, and then they have a Vortex Plus or a Vortex Pro or something like that.
They have a Vortex Plus, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is, right? They're basically the same plug. What's different about it is that the Plus has the interlock pin between the 2 DC pins, which was something that Ford was really passionate about, and Tesla does with their original adapter. And then it's also got that UL 2252 kind of meets the criteria for it. And but again, UL didn't do the testing. And one of the things I've learned is that, and I don't know that I agree with UL on this. When UL does the testing, they do it under non-cooled cable loads. So what Mariano talked about was, for theirs, it's only certified at like 380 amps or something like that is the 2L, that's what UL is certifying for, because without liquid cooled cables, you can't have a continuous 500 amp load on it. It's just not gonna happen. So
they certify it, and they just recognize that they're only allow a peak to 500, but they're not allowing it to stay at a constant draw.
Exactly right. And it's so it's interesting because I've just kind of gone down this incredible rabbit hole of NACS to CCS adapters. And I found out that the Amphenol one is actually for sale in Canada. There is a Canadian website that has a distribution of them. And there was a channel that did a test with them. And I found the Canadian website, but I heard from the guy that did the test. God bless him. He's awesome. His name is Jay. He's got a channel as well. Wisconsin EV is his channel. So shout out to Jay. But he is the first one I've seen test the Amphenol adapter. And he he got his from the Canadian distributor, and then I felt bad because it got delivered by FedEx, of course, international shipping, and FedEx sent him a bill for the tariffs, and the tariff bill was like $180 or something insane, you know.
Oh no.
And so I've just been learning so much about this stuff. So clearly, you know, in this example, this is Amphenol is having these made in China. They've sent them from China to this Canadian distributor, but you haven't reached the U.S. yet. And then it comes across from the Canadian border, being made in China, not Canada, and gets the huge, you know, incredible tariff on it. So I felt so bad for him, but I reached out to Mariano and I said, hey, you know, what's the status on these? And he said, yeah, they are at this Canadian distributor. They haven't made it to the U.S. They're ramping up the factory production of them. They will be.
The biggest issue the tariffs.
Biggest issue is the tariffs because they're being made in China, and so trying to get all of that figured out. And then this is kind of a side tangent. United Chargers, who makes the Grizzle E, was really great and sent me one of their mobile chargers that I'm going to get to test here pretty soon. And learning about that tariff situation is different because it also comes from Canada, but I wasn't sure if I was going to have to pay a tariff if they shipped it to me, and I didn't. And the difference is that Gleb, who owns United Chargers and does the Grizzle E products, those guys make all of their stuff in North America, all of their parts. And, you know, if you get parts from China and then assemble them in North America, you're still going to get the tariff because the source of the battery pack or the motor or the parts or whatever it is still from China. And that's the case with so many of these adapters, is that they come from China and then they might be finished off in the US or in Canada. But when they ship, their ultimate source was China, whereas Grizzle E, for example, is not. And so I didn't get the tariff on the Grizzle E charger, but had I gone and got the Amphenol one, I would have. So I have not been able to test that one, but that one is UL certified. And the way that they talk about it is that it's rated at 380 amps, but is allowed to do a peak of 500 amps for a certain amount of time, which makes total sense and is perfectly great with, you know, the Lightning, for example, because it gives that 500 amp peak. But it'll be interesting to see how these different companies go about it, because then I start getting into the testing, and there's different sensors that derate and shut things down when it gets hot, and there are safety switches that should be there, or the interlock that should be there but aren't in many cases. And so that's kind of what I've been testing. I've been testing like all these different adapters that are on Amazon. People are buying them, right? So let's talk about how they work. And I've had varying degrees of success and education with them. So
that's the thing that we've mentioned this like 10 times on the podcast. I think we talked, was it last week or the week before last that we brought it up again, is the fact that like so much security and safety goes into the car, and so much safety and security goes into the charger, and the adapter is just this big rogue wild card. You could buy something on Amazon and burn a building down, and no, people are ignorant to where they don't understand. We talked about this with Mariano. I think we talked about it within the last 2 weeks. But the point of this today, again, is rehashing the fact that adapters matter. And for Jesse and I, our whole premise for the company has been the best adapter is no adapter, because if you're going to release an EV charging station, do it to where you can provide charging without an adapter, because it's that extra complexity that creates points of failure and points of safety issues. And I mean, we talked about it before, but Brandon Flash did doing some reviews on some chargers that had hot pins that you could actually touch, and like just like the crazy things that people don't realize, that like these things aren't that well monitored, and somebody could come up in their basement, slap together an adapter, sell it on Amazon, and all of a sudden somebody dies because this product is, I mean, so much energy is flowing through this thing that like you have to pay attention to what you're plugging your car in with. And so I've reiterated that for the 17th time, but we're going to say it again. And so this kind of goes into your story. You're getting all these different adapters, and obviously there's the big fish, the A to Zs, the electrons, and those type. But then there's some questionable ones, which can create failures and points of concern.
Yeah, and that's and we just had Martin was on his trip to Canada, his fishing trip, and on the way he used the A to Z, which is usually a super reliable adapter. It's the one that I use. It's my go-to one. He has had consistent problems with the version 4 dispensers. And he's like, for whatever reason, I can't get it to work on these version 4 dispensers that Tesla has. But the original Tesla one works just fine, and so we ended up using that one. But everywhere else, that Typhoon Pro has been working great. I literally just learned, I believe it was last night or this morning. My timelines blur, and I don't know what day of the week it is anymore. The holiday threw me off. But I just learned that the A to Z Typhoon Pro, the very first ones that came out, the prox pin is slightly shorter, and so it doesn't work well with the design of the version 4 cabinets. But since then, the newer ones do. And I have one of the newer Typhoon Pros versus Martin, I think, has one of the originals. So I actually mean to send him a message and be like, hey, reach out to A to Z, and they're going to swap it, is my understanding.
A to Z needs to send him a refresh.
Yeah. So again, it's these little nuanced things, right? And it's and this goes all the way to things like that Tom Malogny does with his NEMA 1450, where the industry hasn't caught up with the safety, right? Not every new NEMA 1450 is created equal. If you're not using Hubble or a similar type of one, they can melt and catch on fire and have problems, even though they're perfectly appropriate for use cases with an oven, for example, or a welder or a dryer plug or whatever. It doesn't mean it can charge an EV, and they need to catch up with that. And the same thing is happening with these adapters, where companies are out there and they're saying, oh, it's got this, IP rating for waterproofing, and it's got this, UL listing, but the UL listing, when you look at it, is the fireproofing for the case, or it's the wires inside are UL listed, or, the cable on the extension that somebody might make might be UL listed, the cable itself, but the entire device is not. And the UL listing that they're referencing isn't 2252. It's a totally different UL listing. So they'll say these things like safety certified, but safety certified in what way? Not in the 2252 way. And so they're getting so creative trying to imply something that isn't true, is what I'm finding. And I understand why they're doing it. It's just not. It's some a little bit unseemly in a lot of ways. And so, Brandon Flash, who we mentioned earlier, had probably the worst interaction with Henshaw, who has a NACS to CCS adapter extension, which has the adapter and an extension cord. A to Z is making one similar, and we've talked to Amin, the CEO, on our show before as well, and I talked to him about some of this stuff, and he says, yes, we are still coming out with the adapter. So I should be able to test that at some point in the very near future. But they really want to get it right. They want it to handle the correct amount of amperage for the right amount of time. It's not going to be able to do 500 amps. Again, it's not liquid cooled, so that's not realistic. But it's meant to be what it's meant to be. And so they really want to get that right and get all the safety switches and all the things that we did not see on Brandon Flash's video. And they're doing it the right way. They're testing it. They're going to have it right before it gets sold and released, not the other way around it. What I'm finding with Henshaw actually reached out to me. And after the interaction with Brandon, I was in the middle of a conversation with them about testing. And when I saw the Brandon Flash stuff, I was like, no, guys, I can't do this with you, because I'm going to give the same feedback. And the reaction you had, you joked about, it can kill you. Their reaction back to Brandon was literally, did you die? Yeah, okay, look, you could unplug it when it's live, but that's not the right way to use it. And here's the instructions. And I always make it a point in all my videos. I always say, here's the box, here's the adapter, here's the instructions. I never read these. I mean, that's literally a comment I make in all my videos, is I never read the instructions. If the instructions are what's required to keep you alive, then the product has a problem.
That's very true. I mean, in most things in life, you have to future proof for dummies. And that's no dig to you, but me too. Generically an adapter, I would expect to plug it in and it just work, and me not have to look at the directions on how not to die. And it's a joke, and we can laugh about it, but it's very serious to the point that you're dealing with enough current to kill you. And, when it comes to AC charging and you're looking at these low speeds, it's a lot of energy, but there's a little bit more versatility on heating controls and some of those things that makes it a little bit easier to control. With DC fast charging, when you're dealing with the amount of voltages and the watt, like everything coming through that hose, it is insane. And people don't understand and respect the energy that's coming through their cable to their vehicle, and it's massive amounts of power. Jesse and I've always related our EV charging sites to the amount of Walmarts that are being run out of a single location, because people just like, hey, just plug the car up, it charged it, and they just don't compute. Like, somebody showed up to my office where I have a 9 kilowatt charger and thought they could fast charge their car, because they're just like, people just don't know better. But it's like the amount of energy flowing through a DC fast charger, into these Silverados, 400 kilowatts, of max speed. A 200 kilowatt charge is what the average house consumes in like a week, and they're doing it in like 30 minutes. And these people are like, they just don't understand how much energy is running into their vehicle. And so when you deal with the secondhand adapters and extension cables, and even, we talked about it when we had Stash D, the gentleman that was talking about fire safety. Like, the wiring in your house needs to be able to support the charger itself on the wall, because the wire can overheat if it's not appropriately sized to charge even your level 2 charger in your house, because it's so much energy with a constant draw coming out, like a dryer plug, but on steroids with these things. And so, people need to pay attention to the safety aspect, because there's a much larger risk with any of these devices attached to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as we go into the future, and as charging gets faster and battery technology gets to where you can do those types of Silverado type chargings, that's what's all over Japan, not Japan, China. That's what they have in Europe now. I was just, able to do a Zeekr with a Zeekr trip with roaming Norway. And William and I went to a charger, an Alpatronic, and got 375 kilowatts out of that thing. And it ripped, man. It was great. That's the future. So I think you guys are doing it the right way. I think Ayana is doing it the right way. The right adapter is no adapter. And I used to not believe that. I'll be honest. I was like, I don't care. You're going to use an adapter either way. Somebody, no matter which charge plug you go to, you're going to have an adapter. It's not a big deal. But I'm the more I test these things, the more I've changed my mind. There are so many things with the safety, with the derating, with the heat, with the these little interoperability things, that even the best, right? Let's go down the list real quick. The original Tesla adapter that was sent out by Rivian and Ford had a moment where during manufacturing, some things weren't quite right, and they had to recall a big batch of them, if you remember. Then the original Electron one came out, and it kept sticking to the handle. And Brandon Flash did a great video on that, where it was just sitting there attached to the handle, stuck. They, revised that. A to Z, the original one had the switch, and the switch was kind of difficult to use, so they came out with the new one. But even the original version of the newest one, like we are now discovering, didn't work well with the version 4 cabinets. Now they've got their stuff correct. Tesla really hasn't ever updated theirs, but they seem pretty stable. And then the Electron latest and greatest one seems to be okay, although I still see occasional videos of their adapter getting stuck. So even the best in the industry, still with an adapter can run into problems.
Which blows my mind, because a lot of these EVSE companies are investing in infrastructure, like Walmart with Alpatronic, and Mercedes with their Alpatronic units that they're deploying, and they're just doing CCS only. And Alpatronic has the capability to add those cables. I mean, we had looked at Alpatronic for our solutions, and I mean, they have NACS and CCS capable on their all-in-one, and you can actually do 4 cables per charger.
Ayana does it. Ayana has both. Yeah,
but that's something that, like, for any industry professional, like, why in the world would you not do that? Because in the situation for futuristic deployments, so many of the future vehicles are moving to NACS, and so then you're going to be dealing with having to provide adapters to all these individuals to use your chargers, because the new Rivian that's going to come out, that's already being produced with the NACS port, that individual is going to have to use an adapter to charge their car. And you as a charge point operator are outdating yourself, not only to 70% of the market, which is already Tesla, but also to all these new vehicles that are going to begin to roll off the line with NACS only ports, unless you want to just go and figure out how to change your cables at your site down the road. But it seems like just go ahead and put in that infrastructure. And I've seen some start to incorporate those features, but it's something that should be broadly encouraged amongst charge point operators, because the units themselves are great. And just like you pull up to a gas pump and you have a gas and diesel head, you have to adapt I mean, it's different fuel type in that situation, but you have to have the solutions for all drivers that show up. And that's where, that's a minor solution to add to go ahead and protect the industry as it exists today, but as it's going to be tomorrow. Which is why every deployment that we're doing, even though it costs a little bit more, we're doing those satellites that have the NACS and CCS, because we don't want to have to deal with the safety, the risk, and also just the driver inconvenience of having to navigate. If they can't figure out what a level 2 and level 3 charger is, how much more are they going to show up and realize that their Tesla won't charge at the charging station because it's an EV charging station? Why can't it charge my car? No, you don't have the right cable. And they're going to go on Amazon and order something junky and get themselves hurt because they haven't.
Yeah.
They don't know any better.
Yeah, these guys, they do these things already with the ones that have like a CCS and a Chatamo. So now it's just, doing with a CCS and a NACS is the right way to go. Kempower, who's doing
every Nissan Leaf owner out there. I'm not.
Yeah.
We're not installing Chatamo at our sites. It's a dying. it's a dying breed. CCS and NACS are the future, so we are rolling that way. So yes, if you are the Nissan driver, I apologize. I'm not all inclusive. I'm 99% inclusive. But for those individuals, bring your adapter and we'll get you topped up. But I think most of those drivers realize that they need to have an adapter, and they already do, because that's a dying plug.
And shout out to A to Z. A to Z makes a great adapter for the Nissan Leaf, and if you need one of those, they're available. Absolutely. But I think the right way is Kempower is doing yours, where you can have a NACS and a CCS on the same same satellite, right? And then in the case of Albatronic, I've seen Iona where they've got some of them are NACS and some of them are CCS. So you can certainly do it that way as well.
And the major consideration as a CPO, just to kind of step back, is like a lot of the charge operators like Autel and ChargePoint and some of these other units, like if you take one of the CCS and convert it to a NACS, then that charger is capable of charging 2 cars. If you make it NACS, then you lose 1 CCS. So if an Electrify America with their units took that and changed it, it's not like it's an and/or. It is you lose 1 CCS to choose NACS.
Got it.
Whereas with our setup, it only charges 1 car per satellite. And so when you grab a dispenser, it doesn't matter. A second car will not charge. And so, with Alpatronic, they have their boxes that charge 2 cars, but they actually have the capability to add 4 cables onto the front. If you look at the front of their units, there's actually a lot of the ones that you see, they actually have 2 caps over where those other 2 plugs would go. And so Albatron is one of the only all-in-one units that I saw that did that, but they actually had on both sides an NACS and a CCS. So it still will charge 2 cars, but you get to select your cable for that all-in-one. So that 400 kilowatt unit will still split to 200 for both cars. It's just a lot of the major mainstream, the Deltas, the ABBs, all of those major companies that release units, it's only 2 cables per all-in-one unit. And so you have to choose, am I going to serve the NACS only, or am I going to serve the CCS? You can do one of each, but you're losing a CCS plug to gain a NACS plug. Whereas some of these solutions like Kempower, you're not losing anything. It's just adding a secondary choice for the driver. And so that's where, as a CPO, a lot of those that have the partnerships with the ABBs and those companies, they don't want to take the risk of, hey, I'm going to lose a CCS to gamble on a Tesla driver showing up. So I understand that decision. That's why we chose the hardware providers that we have. But at the same time, look at the hardware providers that have the capability to not lose the functionality, but to keep you to where you can offer the NACS cable, if that makes sense with how I explained it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just I think it's going to be a problem, certainly in the next 5 years, where you've got so many CCS out there and you've got people transitioning to NACS. I have still not heard about Ford and whether or not they're going to transition to NACS in 2026. I have not heard any whispers. As of now, everything is still CCS. Number of cars are starting to switch. So there's going to be a need for both, and there's going to be a need for adapters. And if you want to pull up the page, I can talk about some of the adapters that I kind of went through. So, the first one was here with this Fox Prod unit. This one is a little compact one, at kind of similar size to the original Tesla one, and it worked fine. It worked great. The problem was, like so many of them, the place where the Tesla supercharger plugs into the adapter, that switch isn't a switch. It's just a latch. So it latches in, but there's nothing when you go to unplug it to de-energize it until the pins come off, and you could potentially, unlikely, but potentially get an arc. And this is the thing that Brandon pointed out in his extension cable one. And this is very common. I'm finding that of the adapters I tested, 3 out of 4 of the adapters had this problem where that connection point of the supercharger handle and the adapter, at that connection point, there is not a switch or an interlock that prevents you from unplugging it while live. And that was a big deal. And so the charging worked fine. The thermals were fine. Everything else about the adapter was fine. But
there's a reason that in the Lightning, the charger locks into your car until you disengage the session. But with the adapter, you lose that safety point. And that's I mean, what you're saying is exactly that. I mean, my Lightning, when I plug in a charger, it locks it in. And I can't just pull my charger out. AC charging, you can. But DCFC, when you're plugged in, it will lock the charger in. You either have to hit the stop button on the car, whatever that disengage button is, and it will stop the session and unlock your vehicle, or you have to end the session on the charger, or else that plug will not come out of your car. And so what you're saying is with the adapter, it will lock the adapter into your car, but then you can just rip the supercharger right out of the adapter, which, like you said, could create an arc, which is very dangerous.
Yeah, 100%. Now, in theory, the moment that prox pin or whatever starts to separate first, like that prox pin is shorter than all the other pins. So in theory, if engineered correctly, and if all things are working as they should, the moment that smaller prox pin starts to become removed, it shuts down the charging and it shouldn't be a problem. But that's assuming all things working correctly. That's assuming that the production of this adapter is at the exact right millimeter length that it's supposed to be. That's assuming that the supercharger disengages exactly at the millisecond level the way it should. And in most cases, it absolutely will. And nobody, to use the phrase, has died in the meantime, or we definitely would have heard about it. But that said, it is not the right way to engineer it. It is not the ideal way, certainly. And I give this feedback every time to these guys. This is something you gotta improve on. You gotta get this fixed for the next adapter. And then, the only one that was successful fully for me was this one by EV Base. This EV Base one that I did, it is essentially, and you can see here, EV Base adapter, same as Tesla. I mean, it literally looks exactly the same as Tesla. I mean, it's a brushed silver instead of a glossy silver. The button's slightly bigger, but I swear to God, it looks like it was made in the exact same factory. Like if you put them side by side to 9 out of 10 EV drivers, much less 9 out of 10 in the public, nobody would be able to tell the difference. Only a few people would ever be able to tell the difference. And even if they could spot the difference, they couldn't tell you which one was which. They look so similar, but they do have the safety interlock, and it does work correctly, and it did handle the thermals correctly, and it did everything that it should do. So of all of the third-party kind of questionable adapters, the EV Base one performed and had all of the safety features the best. And then ironically, the other ones all had little aspects. This one next here, this one by EV Dance. Now, EV Dance has an interesting design. I don't know how well it shows on the screen, but it's got this big handle. It almost looks like a CCS charge handle. You know what I mean? Very easy to hold and to move. It even gives you, it's got that bigger size, so it almost gives you a little bit of an extension in and of itself. And it's great, except that underneath it, at that attachment point again, where they connect, I guess I can click on it real quick here. I'm not sure if this will show, but see if I can find the spot on it. It's got this kind of strange twist situation. And again, it's not a switch, it's just a latch. So I don't know if this will come up here. But yeah, let's see if it shows on the back on this video if I got to the right stopping point. But that switch right there works correct on top the way it should, but the one underneath is a rotating dial. And I think I need to back up here. High quality production on my part right now. Sorry, I apologize. Here it is right here. So you see that's that lock and unlock, that dial format, right? And so that reminded me a little bit of the A to Z, how you had to rely on the user to correctly switch it or unswitch it and to lock it or unlock it. But even with the lock, unlike the A to Z, if you locked it or unlocked it, it would, in fact, that was a lot of the problem with your very, very original A to Z, is if you didn't lock it properly, it would initiate a charge. And so people would get confused by that. So that was one of the big things. Is in this case, that is just a dial latch. It is not an actual switch. So what happened was I plugged the adapter in with it unlocked, and the supercharger just started to spool up. It just started to charge. Like it didn't. There was nothing to stop it from doing that, which meant the equal thing was true, that I could also, in the middle of a charge, pull it right out of there. And there was nothing to stop me. And the moment that I locked it or unlocked it, the moment that I unlocked it, it should have shut it down. It should have had a switch in there that did that, and it didn't. So now, are most people going to do that, or is that really, would the prox pin not disengage? There's so many what ifs in order for that to become a tragedy. But it's a greater than zero possibility that a tragedy can occur, and that's the point. Is it likely to occur? No. Have thousands, even tens of thousands of charge sessions and people tried this and had it work perfectly fine? Absolutely. But if you're the one that it fails on, it doesn't make you feel any better that 10,000 other people did it without a problem. So again, I passed along that feedback, and then the latest one I did was this one by a company called Hanshaw, and this one again kind of ran into some of the same problems that we've seen before, but this one had some additional issues where in the middle of my charge session, it just turned off. It safety now, like, this is a safety pro, I guess. It's got sensors that if it gets up into the near 100 and 100 teens 120 degrees, it will derate itself, and then it will eventually shut itself off. But it did that twice to me. So not only does it not have the safety mechanism underneath it, it also shut itself down. So again, I passed along my feedback to these guys. Unlike Brandon ran into, everybody that I passed along feedback to took it well, passed it along to the engineers. They watched the videos. Although these guys were like, hey, can you clarify? Can you edit that it's working as designed and all these other kind of things? So, okay, clarification. It is working as designed. If it heats up, it will derate first, and then it will shut itself down.
You can
But
buy this charger and it just stopped working. So that's
yes,
good to know.
yeah, and so that is a thing though, where it's, so then the question is, how else is it designed in a way that isn't thermally giving the heat, the thermal management on it, that doesn't allow the heat to dissipate in a way that doesn't cause it to shut down? So even in that regard, there's an area for improvement there. I'd rather the sensors be there to derate it, and I'd rather the sensors be there to shut it down. So credit to them for building in the sensors, because again, not everybody builds in the sensors. So yeah, credit to them for that. Love to see that switch added to the connection point, and I'd love to see it get an engineering change where the heat dissipation and the thermal management doesn't mean that on something like a Ford Lightning that peaks at 500 amps for 6-7 minutes, whatever it is, that ideally shouldn't overheat the adapter over time, right? It should be able to do a 10 to 80 charge curve and not overheat in a Bay Area moderate day of 75 degrees, right? This wasn't the Arizona desert. This wasn't the humidity of the South. This was a moderate day in the Bay Area at 75 degrees. So, that's a pretty ideal circumstance for charging. So again, I feel bad for all these companies, because I'm in favor of all these companies expanding EV adoption and making it easier for people to be out there with their electric vehicle. But these little things matter, right? These safety aspects matter. The thermal management matters. Saying that something is safety certified and UL listed and implying that it's UL 2252 when it's not, it matters. And so it's a bit of a world. It's a wild west out there. It's a little bit of chaos. And I think that's kind of where I've landed on it, man. So I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we wrap up. I think that's kind of, just what I found anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important just to continue the verbiage that it's important to know what you're buying, and obviously go to YouTube. I mean, your channels like yours have been great at doing the reviews of the adapters. We've not done much on our channel for adapter reviews specifically, but I mean, channels like yours and others like Brandon's that are doing reviews with these different technologies, understand what you're buying before you spend $100-$200 on these different technologies, because safety is important, reliability is important, because maybe it is functioning as it should, but if it's going to keep shutting down, that's going to be a poor user experience.
Absolutely.
And so yes, the switch should be there to shut off if it overheats, but what's the issue when the other ones don't and this one does? So understand what you're buying, and obviously look at the safety, because that's ultimately the most important thing. But we can harp on that all day, but continue to investigate and understand when it comes to adapters, what makes the most sense. And, if in doubt, go to a power up station because, the best adapters know adapter.
Yeah, I agree.
But yes, I mean, I understand. And with the big wide world of EV charging, the adapters are very much needed. I used my Tesla / Ford one that was shipped early in that process, and it's been great. And so with that being the case, that's just you find what works and use it. So that'll be all for today. Just wanted to kind of talk about that experience and rehash again the importance of understanding what you're plugging your car into. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below. Chris and I will respond. And, obviously we can expand this dialogue further, but would love to hear from you, your experience with charging adapters and what you found that you really like. But we will sign off for today and tune back in next week. We're hoping to have another great episode of Turn Down for What and more EV news and updates to come. So
yes, sir. Check out all those videos. Check out all those videos on Bow Family EV. I've got 4 of them up. And yeah, appreciate you guys watching and listening.
Bow Family EV in the description of this video again. And so you can check out the channel for all those adapter reviews if you're looking. So
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week for more EV news and updates.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.
I'm going to bounce, bro.